everyone. This is a special call Transportation Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, October 4th. And we do not have minutes from our last meeting, September 25th. And since this is a special called meeting, we're going to rely heavily on the Department of Transportation folks to get us up to speed on some of the items here, because I know I didn't get an opportunity to sit down and read through some of the submissions. So first up is a pavement management agreement.
Good afternoon. My name is Colin Alexander. I serve as Senior Planner with the Birmingham Department of Transportation. Before you is a professional services agreement that is related to our pavement management asset management program. As you recall, back in 2022, the council dedicated $500,000 to pavement management and asked us to develop a pavement management program. We began an RFP process that went live in May. We got 5 submissions. We had a review committee made up of Department of Transportation, PEP, and capital projects. We looked at the applicants and we settled on Roadway Asset Services, better known as RAS. They are a pavement management company, pavement inventory company, engineering company based out of Texas. They do similar work in 10 of the top 20 largest metros in the U.S. Some examples where they've operated include Salt Lake City, Denver, Memphis, and Charlotte. We were thoroughly impressed with RAS's capabilities. What they provide is a vehicle in which they drive city streets, giving us visual information as well as laser readings on all of our streets that we can then use to categorize and give pavement condition index scoring.
So visual meaning?
There's a camera on the dashboard and again a 360-degree camera on top of the vehicle as well.
Are they using ground penetrating radar?
Not ground penetrating radar, they're using a laser system that is measuring cracks and depth of cracks for us to get a sense of what the road condition is.
Okay.
And they are going to be doing a full scan of all of our city streets, including our alley network. The proposal includes that. It includes some GIS cleaning up that they're going to do for us. Our centerline mile data that we have here in the city is mostly geared towards addressing a 911, and so there's some certain data sets to that RAS needs to do efficiently, and it would take a lot of time for our staff to do that, and so we're going to contract with RAS to clean up that data, and they're going to partner with our GIS department. Things such as, pavement condition or pavement type. Is it concrete? Is it asphalt? Is it cobblestone? Things like that. That will help us really hone in on cost projections and where we need to spend our resources. Additionally, as part of this, because you get a 360-degree camera view, RAS will be doing an inventory of all of our ADA curb ramps as well, and that will help us. That data is going to help us fill out an ADA transition plan going forward as well. We needed that data set, and so this is an opportunity to collect that data in the field. Altogether, that RAS's contract is under the $500,000 that the council provided. The scope of work they provided for us is $426,982. Once they go out and do the scanning as part of this as well, are going to contract with StreetLogix, which is the software provider. StreetLogix will take all that data and will help us then program out, based on available funding, what streets we should pave in order to get the best overall pavement condition index score for the city and also for the individual council districts. So we have a good sense of where we should be spending our funds.
So this is a one-time survey.
So we have it set up. This is a one-time survey to start with, correct? We're going to be doing that survey and then doing a series of projects based off of that survey. And then we intend to come back and do additional surveys in the future.
So where is the management part of the agreement? I mean, if they're just conducting a survey and telling us, giving us a snapshot of a point in time, that's, I don't know if survey management actually fits that description. I mean, that's more of an inventory.
I think they're helping us develop scenarios
That's exactly right.
based on, so like, we would have choices on how to weight certain aspects and prioritize streets. So I think that's where the management comes in.
And they'll also be able to help predict rate of decay that we can then go back and on a future survey confirm as we go along.
So it's not just collection of data, but it's using the data to help us set a reasonable target that's aligned with our budget. So that's going to help us prioritize and figure out where to allocate resources.
So part of the criticism, that we've gotten from the public is that, a lot of our street paving priorities don't match with the condition of the road, and that's largely because of, based off of the little that I know, is the last time that we did this was 2015, and we've kind of been, basing our targeted areas off of that. So I think there's, hope that we would go towards, something that's, not a snapshot type assessment every 8 to 10 years and do something more dynamic.
I think the intent for this is not to be every 8 to 10 years, but in my mind, it's like every 3 years
That's
kind of a
exactly,
thing.
yes.
I mean, we won't have the budget to do an annual, I don't recommend that we spend the budget to do an annual survey.
Right, yeah.
Every 3 years seems pretty reasonable. And then on top of that, paving is an emotional issue for a lot of people, and so regardless of whatever system we use, we're going to hear from a number of folks that don't feel that we chose the right streets. And so, we'll always get that criticism. But I think this is a reasonable system. I think the methodology that they're using is used by a number of peer cities and is respectable. And so it's something that I feel like is defensible as we're making these investments.
And I'm glad James hit on that, because recently everything has been mostly complaint driven on how we pave streets, and we really got to get out of that mindset. But ever since we've been in this administration for the last 5 years, we've almost tried to do $10 million every year to fully fund a complete street paving program. So the system will really go ahead and allow the streets that we have already paved and go ahead and see an assessment for a long-term plan for X street that we did 2 years ago may need to be looked at 3-4 years down the line based off of what the data says.
I 100% agree with you. I would like our decision-making on street paving to be 100% data-driven. Like, take the, I know the guy, out of the equation, so-and-so is my cousin. Take that completely out of the equation and have it purely based on data. Like, if, I hope that they're collecting sufficient information to, when we get those criticisms, we can just turn to the spreadsheet and say, look, your street is definitely not the worst one in the list. So I agree. I mean, the more objective we can make it, that's the right direction, in my opinion.
Yeah, you want to talk about the scoring matrix?
So, we are going to, this is partially, their scan is going to develop a pavement condition scoring for all of the streets. And that's what's going to go into the Street Logics program, which is what's going to help manage these assets. It's going to basically, from there, we plug in, here's the budget that we do, here's the overall score that the city has, here's the score we want to reach with this amount of money, what streets should we pave in order to make? So if we have an overall city index, let's say, of a score, and again, this is hypothetical because we haven't done the work yet, but let's say the city score is 52, and we want to get the score to 61. What streets should we pave in order to make that kind of attempt? And that's what the StreetLogic's analytics program is going to do. Once we have the data that's collected from RAS, it will then be uploaded into StreetLogic's, which will then work with us to help program that out.
And then the us is BDOT, capital projects, and PEP.
Exactly.
To do the management part of it.
Exactly.
We need the data more than anything.
Right. So does their assessment also include traffic counts?
It's not budgeted for that, and that's something we could probably go back and talk about.
Because, you know, that's the other thing that I've seen happen is that we pave a block of street where, you know, it's a really low traffic street, and, you know, there's another block that has much higher traffic counts that was in the same or worse condition.
So I don't, because it's a moving scan, I don't think we're gonna be able to get traffic counts, traditional traffic counts, but with the 360-degree imaging, we'll be able to have contextual imaging of what the street looks like.
We could, I guess, invest in like cell phone volume data and then overlay that, because it's all GIS based, so we could do that as a factor,
As a state data.
as a lead
That
factor.
may have to be a separate agreement that we have outside of,
Yeah.
without messing up the RFP that's already been put out there. And since we're not using the whole $500,000, maybe the rest of that can be used towards what you're asking for.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I want us to get to a point where these decisions are completely objective, and, you know, I'm sorry, but if your street in front of your house is, you know, in a residential area, it's not going to be as high as priority as, you know, a main arterial in a community. So I think traffic counts are important, you know.
I will note in the past, some other counselors have expressed a different viewpoint on that and wanting to make sure that we are hitting some of those streets in the residential areas. So I think we'll have to.
I mean, all of it's important, right? You know, but I think taxpayers want the most value out of their, you know, support. And paving a street that has a traffic count of 100 cars a day versus one that has 10 times that many, you know, there's definitely a value proposition for paving the street that has 10 times the number of cars on it.
I think that's a fair part of the argument. I think another part of the conversation that needs to be included is that some of those arterials, because of width and size, are going to be more expensive to pave. And so that by paving some of those per cycle, we have to understand that the raw number of streets that we pave will be reduced. And so we have to have that conversation as well, is that, you know, not every street costs the same to pave. And so I think that should be part of the discussion as we look at, okay, how many arterials, how many roads overall. And I think part of how we have a fair and balanced discussion about that is by tying it to the pavement condition index overall.
Okay. I mean, internally, I think it would be good for us to not strictly rely on that, but have some sort of, you know, formula that also takes into account things like traffic counts and whatever else,
Well,
you know.
and that is actually something that in StreetLogic's we can program in various factors that will help solidify that. So that can be as we set our parameters, that can be part of our discussion of what parameters do we want StreetLogics to be looking for as they budget this out. We want to hit X number of arterials, X number of neighborhood streets, and it can help the program in that capacity as well.
Okay, so the other thing I want to ask about is, historically, the way we have approached street maintenance is we pave the street and then we don't do anything with it until it absolutely has to be repaved again. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do to preserve the condition of the pavement and extend the lifespan of the asphalt. Are they going to be giving us some feedback on?
That also is part of the recommendation. So what we can put in is, again, if we were to do X number of dollars for pavement preservation, what streets should we target for that, and how does that affect our overall PCI score? If we were to put X dollars simply for resurfacing, what does that look like? So there's a lot of complexity in the StreetLogics tool that can allow us to plan out different scenarios based on different opportunities and different approaches.
So the subcontractor StreetLogics is going to take the data that Roadway Asset Services produces and give us sort of a roadmap for how to move forward
Give
with.
us a dashboard that shows all the scores, and then from there we can work to kind of play out different scenarios and say, if we did this much money doing this, what does that score look like before we ever actually put a package out? So it's a planning tool that allows us to take the raw data that's scored out our streets, and then we can program out based on the available funds, what's the best use of dollars and where we get the best scores.
Do we have the internal staff capacity to make those types of assessments?
One note on that, and I don't want to say no. What you're asking about is pavement preservation. Are we able to do that? So we completely agree with you that we need to be moving towards a place where our annual program includes a certain amount of pavement management, so crack sealing and other strategies too. So where we thought we would get there in the last 2 years, actually, where I think there's kind of two reasons why we haven't gotten there yet. One of them is just kind of some high-level napkin math, just looking at the overall total miles of streets. Even though we're investing 10, 15, maybe even some years a little bit more, depending on how you count, million per year in pavement and resurfacing, probably to have the level of service and our roadway conditions that we would like to have, it might be more in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 million annually for a network our size, to have the quality of pavement that we probably want, right? So just trying to address the overwhelming amount of problems has made it hard to carve out some space to then do pavement management right away. But we should be doing that, and we need to get to that place where we're doing it. That's the first reason. The second reason why it's been challenging is just that as we've been consistently investing in paving year over year, as opposed to every other year or whatever frequency, the volume of what we're doing in terms of pavement contracts has really gone up. To my knowledge, as far as I know, we're doing more paving now than we've ever done before as a city. And so we are having to scale up our resources. So I don't necessarily want to say that we don't have staff capacity to do that, but we are still very much in the process of scaling up to meet the amount of investment that we're making. So that's why we just haven't gotten there yet, even though we would like to get there immediately. So we're growing pains, I guess would be the way to say it, but met with still an overwhelming need within the whole system.
So what's the anticipated, if the agreement is approved, what's the sort of the timeline on execution?
So they're gonna start, as soon as we get it executed, we're gonna start getting it out on the roadway. They should have their scan inventory done by the middle of spring, which gives us summer to work with street projects to program, which will set us up for late summer to program out a paving package in 2025 using this software, which is on par with where we've been our packages currently.
Okay.
We're gonna learn a lot from this as we're doing it. I think I like how the system that we're buying into has been used in other major cities, and it's gonna force us and allow us to learn a lot. So I'm excited about that.
With regard to the ADA ramps, isn't all of that information already included in the sidewalk master plan that Goodwin Mills Kaywood did for us?
So we feel that a lot of that data is outdated. A lot of that data was acquired 2016, 2017, and we feel that it's outdated, and so we want to update it. In terms of how many have we replaced, how many have deteriorated since then, what ones need to be replaced. That was part of our feeling, and that was part of GIS's recommendation, that we felt that the data that we had was outdated.
Something to note, we don't see it, we don't necessarily think about it, but every time we're paving a street, we're probably changing a lot of the ramps along that street. Every time we do a streetscape project, we're doing that. We've done big ramp improvement projects around the city. We don't necessarily have mapped data of where all those things have occurred, because they've sort of happened incidentally to a whole bunch of other things, and meanwhile, just the condition of some other things may have changed in that time. So while that's not something we want to inventory every 3 years, every 7, 8 years to 10 years is probably wise. So plus, we are about to update our ADA transition plan, and part of the requirement of that is that we have reasonably recent data.
Chaz, is our enterprise management system that we're set aside $15 million for, is that gonna, address some of these types of issues? Because, I feel like, this stuff shouldn't be getting lost. Like, there should be a system that sort of manages our inventory and keeps track of what's being done where, and
I'll let James speak to that.
That's one of the, that's a good question. That's one of the reasons why we've created a department of capital projects, is so that we can keep track of all the projects that we're doing. I think before it was very much blended into and kind of got lost in this kind of broader department, and sort of everything was under the umbrella of PEP. A lot of that stuff, addressing modifiers, and so a lot of that data got lost. Now we have a department of capital projects. They have a project management software that they're using to just manage all those contracts. They have an inspections team that's dedicated to them. The ability for them to do that, I think that infrastructure is in place. Where is it?
It's a Procore.
Yeah.
Our Procore. So yes. Now, the one you're talking about is more on the financial side, the ERP that we have out of our, that's to take over our New World system and permitting system.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad he said that. But yes, capital projects has Procore. This is a management system for all the capital projects.
Yeah, and that's, and Procore won't help them track ADA ramps,
Yeah.
but that's an example of the kind of sort of enterprise infrastructure that makes us more efficient. And just the structure of having a Department of Capital Projects, which manages a massive volume of work, that having that department, which we're now actually adding staff capacity to that department, is going to allow us to better track the kinds of things that we're doing. We're making huge investments, and we haven't always had the structure that allowed us to really track it.
Council Woods asked a lot of questions. You got anything?
Yeah, I just want to give some clarity on all of this is going to be added to our GIS system?
Yes, that is correct. We are going to be able to take all of this with the GIS data that we will own, and we can transfer it to our GIS.
And I think a lot of the issues with like determining how the streets get done will kind of get washed out if we can maintain our level of investment. So continue streets are getting paid at least 10 million a year every year, so we can kind of keep that pace up. And people can see the progress, like it's like, you can't go years without paving at all. But I think that alleviates some of those things. If, you know, my street didn't get paved, but you know, the side street, over, they see them working down, it has an impact, so I think we kind of did that. One thing I did want to talk about, and you mentioned the gap earlier, but the storm drains, like being able to add that data to our GIS.
Unfortunately, we won't be able to fit that into this effort, but we've talked about that, and it seems like something we want to do.
Yeah, and I think,
We'll talk about that.
well, yeah, I know PEP is not here, but I think they are actually working on inventorying that right now. But I have to get back with you and follow with, because she told me something about that recently.
Yeah, they're working on some kind of initiative.
Yeah.
Well, we got some limitations, once or twice, counting them, one, but being able to put these on the GIS map. To know
Yeah,
exactly
I
where
think
they
that's
are.
part of what she was working on.
And so I guess, talk about the not being able to fit it into this part.
Would it cost significantly more to add that
Like
component?
120 something. But I mean, even if we just use this gap and then maybe talk about it down the road and around the rest of it.
There are a few different issues with it, but I guess for the sake of simplicity, the cost benefit of doing it, after a lot of discussion, we decided that to evaluate that infrastructure through this effort, the benefit of it didn't necessarily match up with the costs. I'll give you one challenge of it. So, you know, we could go through a whole city and say there's 30,000 inlets on the road, it's something like that. And it tells us if the lid is off, you know, for these inlets, and we've spent $150,000. Well, there's so many thousands of inlets, like we won't be able to reasonably address that, and having that data and having so much data in real time, it perhaps is not something that we can reasonably act upon. And that was part of our discussion as to why we've not wanted to do it.
Yeah, I mean, all of this is just data gathering, so I see this as like, one, the location of the inmates.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I'm trying to see how to properly word this.
We may need to investigate this further
Yeah.
and come back to you with another response and some additional information.
I see what you're saying, you know, if you know how bad the problem is, but you can't do anything about it, it's like, well, shit, that sucks, you know, but.
And the condition of the top, some of the tops changes daily, like,
Right.
you know, some of them you can put on today, and next week it's.
Not so much condition as location, one, knowing where all of our inlets are, and then two, knowing what type of inlet it is concrete, is it metal. One thing I saw in Jersey was they actually, for their street inlets, they cut into the road, and there's a metal grate as well as a metal top that's built forward to the curb. So you don't have this huge exposed, I guess, magnet for cars to hit. Like I can't understand why people hit them so much, but
That's the number one culprit.
but I mean, we gotta go to a different,
Yeah.
we gotta change it, I mean, whatever the reason is, it happens all over the city, consistently, like even new ones get replaced and they're hit within 3 months. But yeah, so like now, you pull up GIS, you don't necessarily know where your inlets are, and this could be, you know, it's just data, so it could have the application down the road, but knowing the types and things like that. But I mean, it feels like there's a specific reason why, but you don't want to say it right now. So,
We feel like we can address that through a separate data collection effort associated specifically with stormwater.
so things are happening.
Yes. I mean, at some point, those two things have to intersect because the storm drains are part of the street infrastructure.
Well, I mean, you're at a place now where you have the ability to get the data now, and it's GIS, but that's a thought, something that when I was reading that kind of jumped out at me as a possibility. And when I got to the end, they'd already done it, so, but I'll pause that one there. Is there any like forward-facing plan for this data at all? Will the scoring system be public?
So there are opportunities that we will have to develop with street projects and also work with the administration to see what we want, how we want it to look. But there are opportunities to create public portals to have these advances. I don't know what that would look like exactly, how much information we want to share. That's something we're going to have to really delve in and work with the administration that we got. But there are opportunities for public awareness through street projects.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can, if y'all referred to like emotion around the street paper piece, I think you got opportunity to build on the data and just explain to people. I think part of that is emotion around street paper, part of it is zero visibility into what streets get paved, when, why. And so if there's a, whether it's 1 through 4 tier, whether it's green, yellow, red, but just some sort of, here's our worst streets, here's our, tiered system so they can see and then see it move out when the new pavement list comes up. But it all works if we keep putting at least 10 million a year into road paving. Yeah, definitely, I think there needs to be some sort of forward-facing piece on that. I guess the other part, I guess just a note, coming back around, I guess, I mean, it's probably more of a budget discussion, but having an understanding of like what the need is in y'all area as far as personnel. Because we had the same conversation, like we kind of know where things are trending, whether it's traffic safety, when you want to increase paving loads. I think that just got probably, when did you pick up paving?
We've been kind of migrating into the management of it over the last 2 years, I'd say. And,
but I mean, it's like, what are your needs there? You kind of see the trends, and so, like, we need to be staffing. There needs to be the people, slots of bodies to address these things, because, we can't. My neighborhoods are very engaged, and so it's like, there's only so many times I can say the same, or so many years I can say the same. The striping department is also the speed cushion department, and this is striping season, and speed cushion season will come back. When it does, we might, so it's like, let's just, we've been fortunate that, we've had some positive growth on our budget continually. It might be me, like ever since the budget's grown up.
It's just you.
Credit me for that. But no, I mean, we've got dollars. I mean, we're looking at these surpluses every year, and so let's just, I won't go too deep into it. But let's know what we need, so we have a place to get the residents. Because I mean, residents aren't asking for like outlandish stuff. And there's a lot of low hanging fruit out there that we could get if we could, get ahead of some stuff.
So that's, it's intentional why, the mayor meets with the council to understand what priorities, because y'all are on the front lines just like we are, and understand what priorities are, and then we build the budget around it. James made a point about capital projects that we're still building capacities in capital project. We added 8 more positions to her department in order to, close those gaps in the areas that we need assistance in to get projects moving, projects completed, projects managed, like the whole 9. And I mean, we're only, 3 months into the budget year now, so I know she's working on a plan just like we did with code enforcement. It's just one of those things that's working with the personnel board to try to get these people on, get them on board, and then implementing all these different initiatives and get them completed.
No, I mean, I'm down with that. I just think we need to, let's have some conversation around each department. Like, what it took to get some movement in code enforcement, it shouldn't, it shouldn't be necessary. So let's just work together with it. But like I said, the residents are consistent. I mean, that helps because they are consistent with the things that they're interested in seeing. One of the questions I had was, I want to get some clarity on like what center line was. Is that represent software? Or what is that?
That's just a terminology to say the lane mileage. We're measuring it from the center line. We're not measuring, so we're not going out and saying, instead of doing individual lane miles, we're taking the center line of the street. And that's how we're figuring out how much we're being charged for a seal.
So, but are they scanning the whole street
Yes.
physically?
Yes.
Okay, but they're basing their pricing on just
On
basically
center
one
line.
pass.
That's correct. Now, there are some other factors into that to help. They know how many of our arterials are and what they have. Usually they have to do a double pass on those, so they factor that in. But the way that they calculate the prices based on the center line.
And I guess like GIS, does that have the ability to like, just want to say how many miles of the street do they have? Is that something GIS can kick out to?
Yes.
So we can check that.
Yes.
All right, well, excited to see this pavement snapshot agreement get put together. Since the chair doesn't want to use management.
I made 2 comments in response to your comments, which were good. One is, I guess it's related to staffing, but it's not exactly a staffing issue. You probably heard me say before, and I want to make sure I keep saying it. We have built more infrastructure in our city than we can maintain. And so even if we are perfectly using all of our resources as efficiently as possible, we will not be able to maintain everything we build. And so we're going to see declines in our infrastructure around the city for the foreseeable future. We cannot afford to maintain it. And so we're having to choose priorities of what we want to maintain. So I mentioned before, high-level math, we're investing $10 million a year in paving, but really to have the system that we probably reasonably expect, probably a $25 million annual investment. And so, on the one hand, it's real. It seems like an obvious thing to say, well, we need to add staff here. I think the administration is having to work with all the departments, Parks and Rec, Library, Police, everybody, to figure out what we really want to salvage. That's hard. We have built more infrastructure, not just in Birmingham, but in the United States, more infrastructure than we can maintain. And just as an interesting example, we just passed infrastructure bill nationally. Very little of that money actually goes towards real maintenance. The majority of that money goes towards capital projects, which means used to transform or grow systems in a lot of these interstates. But very little of the money goes towards just pure paving streets, replacement of sidewalks. There's no grant opportunity for that. So we do not have enough resources to maintain all the infrastructure we have. So that's the first thing. To follow up on traffic calming, because you mentioned that's not what we're talking about today, but I did have an interesting conversation with the city of Memphis recently. So they're the city traffic engineer. We modeled our traffic calming system, products, procedures after what they have done, because now they've been at it, I think, for maybe 20 years, doing speed cushions. And their program has grown over time, so they're now investing about $2 million a year in their system. So they do use, within that $2 million, an outside engineering consultant to manage the process. They use outside contractors to do that installation. And even still, since they've been doing that for a couple of decades and they now have that level of annual investment, they still have a 2-year waiting period between when somebody brings up an issue and they can actually get to that issue just because of the breadth of the demand. But I did think that was an interesting just kind of point on the data map. They're investing about $2 million a year, but they're ahead of us time-wise. They've evolved up to that.
Yeah, no, I'm all for doing it at a third party and even a quarter of the investment. But yeah, I think making it a little bit harder to get a speed cushion, because I mean, I think we talked about it. I mean, there's one I don't know about that showed up, and it was just a random thing that just one guy kind of, it probably qualified, but it was a very unique street. But even if they had to go through the neighborhood association or get approval from the neighborhood association, like adding some steps of one, everybody knows what's going on. It's just not, I typed in something on my computer, and everyone, now your whole team is turning and all this stuff is, I guess, building a funnel. So some of that stuff gets sorted out before you actually start doing, putting manuals into it. Yeah, I'm always down to talk about traffic.
Yeah, and I do want to continue to improve the process. So I don't know that I'm aware of that specific case, but I would like to be aware of it, so we can figure out how to manage that process well.
But no, I think ours is going well. I don't know. I think we just need to close the loop on like approval and installation. Like, I think the process itself is evolving well. Like I wouldn't trash it or anything like that. It's just once it gets approved, like the gaps in installation. All right, I'm good on.
One other question. So I'm confident that there are hundreds of locations where there's temporary patches that have been there for seemingly permanent time periods. I mean, this is a long time complaint too. So almost all of those temporary patches are somehow or related to water infrastructure. I feel confident that a lot of them are. Anyway, so chronic problem is this pavement management, agreement in any way kind of moving the needle on addressing that issue?
So a lot of it is related to water, but not all of it. A lot of it is. It's the same issue as just paving streets generally. Like we have a team of inspectors that will respond to, they receive the C-click fix requests when there's some sort of utility cut issue, and they'll go out and investigate that and try to follow up on it. We have a team that does that, and they can resolve issues, and they do resolve issues. The scale of the problem, because the scale of our network is so big, and the age of our infrastructure is such that there's just more volume than we can often stay on top of. And so it goes back to the issue, we've just built more infrastructure than we can afford to maintain. That's the honest answer.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, we'll get this snapshot from RAS.
So you're saying like the patches will decrease the score, or?
Well, what'll happen is that you'll get this inventory, and then a year later there'll be 100, 200 more spots that you don't have any visibility on. I say that technically they're supposed to notify the city, pull a permit, something, but I have no idea whether or not that's happening and what our capacity is to go out and make sure that they've repaired it sufficiently. I mean, just based on my observation, it seems like, you know, we're not, you know, necessarily doing all of that, so.
Stop me if you need to. So a couple of things happen. For the planned utility work, we do review what street they're gonna cut into. And by planned, I mean, it still may be a repair, but they at least have a little bit of time, you know, maybe weeks, to plan in advance. For things that are planned, they do go through our permitting process on the front end, and we actually charge them a fee, you know, as a part of, if it's a newly paved street, they do have to pay a fee depending on how recently that is. And that works fairly well. Like we collect a lot of those fees where a utility company cuts into a newly paved street. We also try to coordinate on the front end and do a pretty good job of coordinating, you know, long-term replacements that are needed with the utility companies. The staff at the utility companies across the board are generally very cooperative and want to work with us to try to, you know, do their work in advance of when we come up and pave the street. You know, I'm sure we can all find examples around where that hasn't worked out, but we don't see the examples where it didn't work out, and there are a lot of those, even particularly with the Waterworks Board. They will go in, we repaved, Aldott repaved a lot of streets in Fountain Heights, for example. That took a long time because the utility companies went in advance and did a lot of their line replacements in advance. So that front-end coordination happens as well. The challenges that we see and feel are the emergency repairs that occur. And companies like the Waterworks do send us lists of where they have made those repairs. The volume of those repairs is such that even though we follow up with them on specific instances and, you know, and they go and address those, just the scale of our network is too big to be able to follow up on all of those as well as we'd like. Is the honest answer. We just have more infrastructure than we can maintain across the board.
So I guess my concern is with that specifically is like around the detail of what they're building, like the repair they do. And so typically, you know, there's a detail that you have to cut out so much, whatever it is, compact it, and put back up a patch that is even with the road. And so either, you know, I guess this may be more legal to get into that range, but what room do we have to require, you know, like a certain method to use, and or if we just qualify third-party vendors that people can use? Because I get, you know, going back and inspecting these, but even like you know, a process for taking pictures and having to submit all that stuff when we get done with it, putting the onus on the people that are doing the work. But it needs to be some sort of like, either you're required to pick from this list of qualified contractors that can do it for you, pay a fee to the city, you know, that is commensurate with, you know, maybe it's a per foot, you do it on linear foot or square footage. If they have to cut a wide section, but I mean, it feels solvable, and I know in other cities where like I may have had to cut the road for some reason, there's a pretty like there's a detail that you have to fix the road back to, and they actually
Yeah, Council, I think it's one of those, I know we kind of talked about this with code enforcement, it's because I had to just look it up real quick. So it's Article H with excavations. I think we just need to revisit that and try and strengthen that and work with the council and, you know, OCA to see what we can do about the way they repatch or repave things that they already excavated.
Do we have, does the Birmingham Waterworks have a franchise agreement with the city?
Yes, they should, yeah. All utility companies should have, yeah. Now, I will say, and James can probably speak to this more than I can. I think our relationship with that leadership with Birmingham Waterworks has, I know it's been kind of fragile at the beginning, but I think they work well with us and they really communicate well with us about when they're doing big projects or if they need a dig for something, a pipe burst or something like that. I know the mayor has actually reached out to the other utility companies that are the corporates and trying to like patch that relationship up and say, hey, y'all are doing a lot of work, we appreciate it, but you can't leave the road in this, state of repair because we're the ones that getting the complaints, not you.
Right.
That's right.
I'm just thinking that, that I don't know how often that comes up for renewal, but, the franchise agreement may be another opportunity to make some revisions to that agreement to add in some more, accountability on those types of things.
Yeah, I think we just need to revisit this Article H in the city code about excavations. Are you familiar with that? Kind of.
No, but I think a franchise agreement renewal is a fair place.
It's a fair place, yeah.
To address some of that, I don't want to, I'm here as long as you guys want to keep going.
Right.
But specific to this issue, because it is a big issue, we do have standard details, and I think the standard details are very good details. The management at, using Waterworks as an example, but they're not the only company, the management at the Waterworks sincerely care about the quality of work that they do. The challenge, again, comes from just the age of the infrastructure, the volume of the infrastructure that they're having to maintain. When they send out a crew, and they use both their own crews and contracted crews, so if somebody's not there to hold that crew accountable, then some of that work will not be good quality work, even if the detail was good and the management cares and all those other pieces are in place.
But, what I'm thinking is if they're already reporting to you the locations where they've done emergency repairs, then, why can't they come back to you when they go out and, take that temporary patch and turn it into a permanent patch? I mean, it seems like, if they're generating the information to tell you where the temporary repairs, the emergency repairs are occurring, then, they also have the capacity to come back and tell you, okay, we did an emergency repair there. It's been, a month. We've allowed that temporary patch to settle and we put the permanent patch in place.
When we track a patch or a set of patches, and we have photos and can document what's happening, we hold them accountable, we bring it to their attention if there's an issue, they will resolve it. They will definitely resolve it.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, it's like the city has limited capacity. I hear that from you all the time. So, like Councilor Woods just, proposed, let's work to try and put more responsibility on the people who are doing the work to actually carry out, some of these tasks versus, us having the responsibility of making sure that other people are doing the work.
Okay, so one, do they have to notify us before they do it?
So if it's an emergency repair, then they need to notify us after they do the work. So like they may go out in the middle of the night and fix something. And so they try to do that. Management wants to see that happen. They have so many people going so many different directions that it is not a perfect process. And so that's where, I'll give you an example. Somebody from a neighborhood sees a failed utility cut or something that's just a botched job, and they may know who did it, like as in what company it was. They may have seen the company. When it was 3 weeks ago, they bring that to our attention, and we contact that utility company may have differences in their records, like because it was something that happened in an emergency or some sort of weird coordination with something else that was going on. And so it becomes this investigation to put back together exactly what happened at that spot, and it requires staff resources from us to pin it down, to say, no, this is exactly what happened, and this is who's responsible, because all you can see on the surface is just a busted patch. And so, you have to do some investigation. When we do that investigation and we put it back together and we take it back to them, they don't fix it. The trouble is, there's just so many of those mystery situations where all we see is a busted patch, and the records, because there's so many crews going in different directions of the different agencies, may not always be real clean. It just requires a certain amount of effort to piece all those situations together. The volume is greater than what we can pin down.
Like a full-time job.
Yeah, and we have multiple full-time people doing that work. It's just,
Well, I mean, we have people focusing.
yeah, we have multiple people that their job is to track down utility issues in the system, get those back to the utility companies or contractors, hold them accountable. And when they do that, it works, the system works. It's just the volume of how much is happening is too great.
Like, even if we have a way to know, like, all right, so what contractor did this patch, like, almost like a form, like, hey, you want a patch here, what's the location, who's doing the patch, what's the reason, and even if that was digital, so it's just always there. And, it's got your date stamp on it, what date it happened. But, part of that is like being a little more stringent on the quality of the patch in the first place, so people aren't, because trustful gas and utility just butchered the street, coming up Gene Reed Road, just did a horrible temp patch, came back about a month later, and just did a pretty bad, permanent patch, but, like, it's hard to, like, you don't want to always be chasing this on the back end, it's, how do you get it tightened up on the front end? Even if it's some sort of agreement to use certain vendors, that everybody just, hey, these folks are qualified, here's the standard for the patch. Everybody just agree to use them, maybe get some sort of, joint RFP or, RFP or whatever. I just think there's solutions there. And that's another one where we turn into parrots, because we're saying, like, some resident every 3 months is going to ask about a patch, and I'm going to say, well, different utility company, I'm going to just do the whole spill. And then 3 months later, I'm going to do it again. So, but like everything is not, none of it's easy, but there are some paths to constraining this on both ends, where it's a little bit more stringent front end. Here's what the expectation is, and then the back end, we're a little more aggressive when we do it, like, because that was like, we don't care, like, they butchered that street, and
I think this is a really important conversation. I completely agree with you. All of these issues are very solvable. There are too many of them. We cannot afford to solve them.
yeah, or we could pick, and Chad's got big money. Don't sleep on Chad. I can't say mine, but
We've built more issues than we can solve.
yeah, but one thing is, you throw them all out there. It's all finite resources and infinite issues, so you're gonna have to pick. But let's create a conversation around the priority, which ones we check off and things like that.
So the bottom line.
I didn't say it. I said it.
Yeah,
Well, I don't think he can, to your point, they don't have infinite resources that every time they see a problem come up, that they can put resources to it.
You know what I'm saying? We have finite resources,
Yeah.
infinite issues, but
Yeah.
there will be some issues that get solved. And so having a conversation around which ones those are.
Yeah, I think it's just to take your point. It's just the toughening the requirements of what we need to do legally to hold them accountable. Like, we can do, as James said, and go out and after them, but if we're not really holding them accountable to a standard of what we want, then it's all for naught.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean,
And then, but if we increase the standards, we have to be able to enforce
enforce
it
it,
too,
yeah.
so,
Yeah, it's a vicious circle.
yeah. All right, so coming back to the pavement management
You went
agreement.
down a rabbit hole.
I mean, the only answer to the whole patching thing that's happening sort of in the background is to do this snapshot more frequently. So it's, you know, just in anticipation for the future. I mean, are we talking about, you
Yeah,
know,
I think-
$500,000 every 2 or 3
Like
years?
maybe every 2-3 years. Yeah, I think James made a good point on that. Like, we don't want this just be a one-off and then we just roll with data for the next 10 years. It has to be continuous. We agree with that.
Okay. All right. Bottom line is, it's got to get done. We're operating off of 2015
Yes.
information right now.
Yes, that's 100% correct.
Okay.
we send this to full council with a positive, affirmative recommendation.
All right. Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, next. We got Alabama Transportation Rehab and Improvement Program Grant Application. A-Trip. A-Trip 2.
So, hey, Colin, I believe, because he was very prepared to speak to this, and I can speak to it as well, but.
We don't have those.
Oh, you don't have it? Oh, okay.
Oh, my bad. I didn't know it.
Is this just one copy? I think this is just one copy. We are intending to apply for a trip to grant, which is ALDOT's grant program, where they allow municipalities to apply for them investing their money in a specific way on their state route. So specifically here, we would like to ask them to invest money at the Tallapoosa interchange off of I-2059. And one, there's this, if you're headed in the eastbound direction on 2059 and you exit, the exit loops around and comes down to the bottom. The traffic signal has been warranted there for a long time, but we are seeing increased interest from industrial partners that have said that if we can help make some investments here to improve that interchange, then they'll be able to invest in property around that interchange to bring more jobs to that area. So because we've seen enough interest from industry, we think that that's a priority to ask ALDOT to work on that interchange. That's not the only.
Like the whole interchange, like big scale, because, or just the signalization at the bottom of the ramp.
There's two parts to it. There's the traffic signal at the bottom of the ramp in the eastbound direction, which loops you around when you're facing westbound, but when you get down to Tallapoosa. So signalizing that intersection, but then also, if you're headed southbound on Tallapoosa, that's a really wide roadway. A lot of the traffic, particularly in the morning, is on that right-hand side and is getting onto the on-ramp to come into downtown or to go west on 2059. We've determined that it would help with safety and weaving and efficiency if we channelize that right-hand movement, which is multiple lanes. It's 2 lanes that merge and then you go onto 2059. So it's also channelizing that with a hard concrete barrier to separate it from the through traffic going southbound. So there's 2 aspects. It's the signalization and then cleaning up that multi-lane, kind of fast-moving facility. So we separate the folks that are getting on the interstate from the folks that are trying to go southbound on Tallapoosa.
I think you're trying to do that with a concrete barrier. Where would the signal be?
So it would be right at the off-ramp, with the interstate off-ramp comes down and lands.
So that one, I know you can go right and then you can start to turn left.
Yeah.
So today you can turn left, but there's no signal to help you turn left.
So you want the traffic light would be at the left turn spot.
We help a truck particularly make a safer left-hand turn coming off of the off-ramp.
Pretty much down to the grandstand, so go forward. I'm kicking 5,000.
So, explain to me how it works. We're asking AlDOT, I mean, what's the grant aspect of this? We're asking AlDOT to pay for that improvement specifically?
That's correct. And so with an HRIP grant, there's actually no requirement for a match. You can just ask them to, because it's their money.
It's their road too.
And it's their
It's their
road. But it's a program where you can ask them to invest their money in a certain way.
Yeah.
They have indicated to us that they're interested in doing this. They know that a signal has been warranted at that location for years. Just because a signal's warranted doesn't mean, it has to or will be installed. But they know that that would be useful to put a signal there. But because of they're aware of this conversation, they've indicated that they're generally supportive. That doesn't mean it will win, but it's good to make sure that they're supportive, and they are.
And you've heard from private sector folks who are saying that those types of improvements could justify further investment in that area.
That's right.
Yes. Okay. Makes sense. All right. Motion to,
We'll send this to the full council with the affirmative recommendation.
all right, second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so next up, we have City of Birmingham and Birmingham Jefferson County Transit Authority, Southern Rail Commission Grant Administration and Cost Sharing Agreement.
Yes. Have you guys received a copy of this one?
Yeah, I think we have it right.
So this one's a kind of a fun one. The work, most of the work's already been completed actually, but I don't know that anybody was aware of it. That's for rewinding several years when Maston-Meadows was over PEP. We applied for a grant through the Southern Rail Commission, which had the ability to allocate some money to improve Amtrak stations around the southeast. And we won a grant. Then after Andre left the city, we took over the management of that grant and actually found out that we had won it. I don't know that we won it while he was here, but we found out that we had won this grant. It was a little bit of an awkward fit for the city to administer that because we don't own the station right there. It seemed like a better fit for the transit authority to administer that grant because they manage that station and work with Amtrak. And so we worked out an agreement with them, a verbal agreement up until now, that if they took over the administration of the grant and made improvements at the Amtrak station, then we would split the local match. So the local match, I think, was $108,000. And so our half of that would be for $54,000. And so what they've done is they've used the larger grant to repaint the station. I don't know if you recall this, but at the Amtrak platform, there was lots of graffiti, and there were, the overhead awning was rusted, and so they have gone through and covered up the graffiti and made some signage improvements and cleaned up the paint of the awning. Did some kind of basic landscaping up top. So it did some basic beautification improvements that really went a long way. And so we're pleased that they took over the administration of that grant. And so this is part of the closeout because we need to make good and pay them for our half of the local match to do that. And our proposal was to do that with TIF funds. It seems like an appropriate kind of project for TIF.
So we basically hold 108.
We
were able to sort of split that with this agreement.
That's correct, yeah, the transit authority is going to pay the other half of that.
Okay. It's too bad we couldn't talk CSX into paying some of the local match since they own the property.
Yeah.
Go back to the work.
There you go.
We may be going to them about something else though.
I hear they have a government affairs representative, but I have rarely ever heard from her, so,
We'll get Camille on it.
yeah. Goes by the name of Jane Covington, but I think I've talked to her one time in my entire life, so,
Yeah, we'll connect.
yeah. All right, motion,
Moved, send this to the full council with a affirmative recommendation.
all right. Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. That motion passes. Okay. Areas of Persistent Poverty Grant Cost Sharing Agreement with Regional Planning Commission of Greater Birmingham.
So this is another partnership, actually. I think maybe 2 years ago, there was an opportunity to apply for this grant. At the time, we were not in a capacity to apply for that. So we reached out to the Regional Planning Commission and said, can you apply for this? It would be within the study, if one, would be within the city of Birmingham. And so they said, yeah, we can kind of share that if y'all can share the local match cost. So they ended up applying and they won. And so they have started that study. They're not finished yet. I think they presented an update on where they were and where they were going, maybe in the spring. So Jim Ritchie is the consultant, and Scott Tillman is helping to manage that project. So they're sort of in the midway point of that study, but it's all within the city of Birmingham, and I think we're grateful to the Regional Planning Commission for doing this effort with their staff. And I think we're going to learn a lot from it, but in order for that to occur, we need to pay our half of the match, or actually I think we're paying a little less than half. So it's $25,000. We're going to pay that from VDOT's professional services budget.
Okay. So you need council approval on professional services expenditures
It's
from your?
intergovernmental agreement.
It's an interlocal agreement, yeah.
Okay.
Kind of unique situation.
They wouldn't come to us if they didn't have to.
You're right.
Okay. Any questions?
There it is. I thought I was looking at it left.
No action required. Stand down.
Green. More cream.
Okay, so this seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah. So we're here. We also said item 6, areas of persistent poverty grant cost sharing agreement with Regional Planning Commission of Greater Birmingham to the full council with affirmative recommendation.
All right, second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes. Any new or old business we need to discuss?
But I guess a comment just regarding this last one, for example, I think they're going to come back to us with some really good recommendations about how to align transportation investments with housing and other land uses, which I think is really important. I think that's the way for us long-term to manage our way out of the fact that we've built so much infrastructure. One of the reasons that we've built so much infrastructure in Birmingham, but in America too, in Birmingham, we are one of the most car-dependent places on earth. And so when we build in that way, we spread everything out to a point to where it's unmanageable. So that's where we find ourselves, and that infrastructure is now old. And so a lot of it's failing faster than we can maintain it. So the way to manage ourselves out of it is to better align our transportation infrastructure like BRT or other investments with our land uses. So in effect, build more density, more walkability, better access to other modes of transportation, build differently than we've built in the past. And that's going to be a multi-generational shift. But that is how we get to where we can address all the utility conflicts. And we aren't so overwhelmed by the backlog of traffic calming requests and all the different symptoms that we see. It's because we are one of the most automobile-dependent places on earth.
And cars. No cars.
Cars are great.
Banned. Chad's gonna sell some of the city. White mess.
Sure.
All right, move adjournment.
All right, second, all in favor, say aye. All right, motion, meeting adjourned.
James, how much is that?